Good morning, drivers. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Jen, and this is my channel, Highway Bound. Hope you are all doing well today. Today, we are going to talk about a major, long overdue course correction that is happening in the trucking world. We're going to talk about the English speaking requirement in order to maintain your CDL. I know this is kind of a controversial topic, but I feel it's necessary that we talk about why this is such an important law to enforce. So, with that being said, make sure to grab a cup of coffee, sit back and relax, and let's get into the video. Alright, so there is a major, long overdue course correction that is currently happening in the trucking world. And it's not about freight rates, it's not about fuel prices or some new gadgets. It's about a language a driver speaks. A federal rule that's been on the books for decades, but was dangerously ignored, is now being properly enforced. As of June 25th, 2025, commercial drivers who cannot demonstrate a solid command of English can be put out of service right there on the side of the road. This change will ultimately strengthen the workforce and reinforce a supply chain that needs to be built on a foundation of safety. The official word is that this is all about public safety, a non-negotiable standard to prevent accidents and save lives. For professional drivers who have been demanding higher standards, for carriers who prioritize safety, and for all of us who depend on the goods these trucks carry, this is a welcome and necessary step. It's a convergence of safety, professionalism, and common sense. Let's talk about what the rule is and what just changed. So essentially, it has been a part of the federal code since in the 1930s. So in Title 49, which is Code of Federal Regulations, Section 391.11, for years, it's said that a commercial driver must be able to, and I'm quoting here, read and speak the English language sufficiently to converse with the general public, to understand highway traffic signs and signals in English, to respond to official inquiries, and to make entries on reports and records. For a long time, this critical safety rule wasn't consistently enforced. In fact, back in 2016, the FMCSA released guidance that effectively created a very dangerous loophole. It told inspectors not to put drivers out of service for violating the specific rule. You might end up with a citation, but you could still continue to keep on down the road. It was treated as a minor issue, not the critical safety failure that it is. That all came to a screeching halt in April of 2025. President Trump signed an executive order aimed at enforcing what the administration calls common sense road rules for truckers. That order told the Department of Transportation to scrap the 2016 guidelines and bring back stricter enforcement. And then in May, Transportation Secretary Sean P. Duffy sent out a memo doubling down, making it crystal clear English proficiency is now a non-negotiable safety requirement. The old policy was a dangerous mistake, and the slap on the wrist was being replaced with proper accountability. So what does this look like on the road? It's not a written test. Basically what they're saying is the test is going to be a practical assessment during a normal roadside inspection or at a weigh station. The new guidance was officially sent out on May 20th, 2025, and as of June 25th, 2025, the CVSA, which is Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance, officially added English proficiency back to the list of out-of-service violations. So what this means essentially is when an inspector walks up to your truck, the assessment starts. They are told to start the conversation in English. If there's a clear communication barrier, they can begin a more formal check. This is a verbal interview where the driver must understand and answer questions independently. And they are very serious about independent communications. The new guidance specifically bans using interpreters or translation apps. The FMCSA says that those tools can mask a driver's inability to communicate in English, which defeats the purpose of the safety check. If a driver has trouble, the inspector can show them pictures of common sense road signs, show them signs like stop or yield, and ask what they mean. If the officer determines the driver does not meet the standard, that driver is immediately placed out of service. The truck is parked until the company sends another qualified, English-speaking driver to take over. That's the new safety reality. The old lax way is gone, replaced by a firm rule that has the entire industry focused on safety. So, why the sudden change with this particular rule? To me, the reason is simple. Public safety. The administration is implementing this as a basic, common sense measure to prevent tragedies. Transportation Secretary Duffy put it bluntly and said, allowing drivers who cannot read stop signs or understand police officers' instructions to operate an 80,000-pound big red threatens the safety of every American on our roadways. The logic is based on situations every driver knows. For example, you're on a 2-lane road and see a sign, bridge out 5 miles ahead, detour. A driver who can't read that is heading towards an absolute disaster. Or think about low clearance bridges. We've all seen the cringeworthy videos of truckers getting the roofs peeled back like a can opener because the driver didn't understand or wasn't paying attention to the height sign. Todd Spencer, who is the president of the Owner-Operators Independent Drivers Association, who has been a big component of getting this rule reinstated, said exactly that, noting that bridges get hit because drivers don't understand what the signs mean. He said these signs aren't suggestions, they are warnings. They save lives, but only if they are understood. The safety imperative goes beyond just signs. It's about being able to communicate when it matters most. For example, let's picture an accident. A first responder needs to ask a driver if they are hauling hazardous material. A misunderstanding could turn a bad situation into a catastrophe for the public and the emergency crews. Even a standard way station inspection requires clear communication. If an officer, for example, is giving instructions on checking brakes and the driver doesn't understand, it could be seen as non-compliance. The government's stance is that English is the language of our roads and laws, so using it is a core part of being a safe operator. A driver must be able to understand weather alerts on a highway sign, follow a flagger's direction in a construction zone, or talk with law enforcement. It's about being able to fill out a logbook or an accident report correctly. From a safety perspective, it's not discrimination. It's a basic qualification, just like having a CDL or passing a drug test. From what I can see, the majority of professional drivers do support the enforcement of this bill. A proposed bill, which is called Connor's Law, was named for a boy who died in an accident involving a commercial driver who reportedly couldn't understand instructions. These type of accidents have put a national spotlight on this. I feel like in the past few years there have been several instances of major accidents that have really kind of shown that light of there might be an issue here. I don't know if you guys remember in Colorado, the guy coming down 70 into Denver, and he took out 23 or 24 cars because he didn't realize there was truck ramps because he lost his brakes. I don't know if you guys remember that. He needed a translator during trial because he did not understand English proficiently. So we have seen countless, I've personally seen more and more stories about this, about drivers that come over here on visas or whatever, and they just don't understand the language, and they end up in these bad accidents and situations. So yeah, it definitely has put a national spotlight on this issue. And I think that supporters of the enforcement point to these heartbreaking stories as well, as kind of proof that the old relaxed policy was a very deadly mistake. They believe safety was compromised for years, and this is simply fixing a major life-threatening loophole. So, what does this mean for drivers, especially drivers that might be here on a visa, or they might have immigrated to this country, several years back, maybe, stuff like that. Like, I'm sure that's a big concern for drivers that, English might not necessarily be their first language. What does this mean? I think one of the biggest points of discussion is the assessment itself. The final call is up to the individual inspector on the side of the road. But this is no different than any other part of an inspection, where trained officers have to make judgment calls about brakes, tires, or logbooks. What one officer sees as communication breakdown, another will likely see the same way. The specific guidance on how inspectors are to run these tests have been heavily blacked out in public documents, likely to prevent people from trying to game the system. So, if they go with a standard set of questions, you can just memorize the questions and do Google Translate for answers. It's not going to help you, right? It'll help you because you'll get out of it. But they need to be able to ask you, they can't give I've heard a lot of people say, well, there needs to be a test. There needs to be a test. But the thing is, that test is going to get leaked onto the internet, and then people are going to know the test, and then it's going to defeat the whole purpose of them reinforcing this law, because they're just going to memorize the test. So at first I didn't agree with this. I didn't agree with this part, but now that I've actually kind of thought about it more and more, I agree with it a lot more. We can't have it written down. It's got to be different every time. Okay. All right. So now I want to pause for a second and hear from you guys, the drivers, the owner operators, and pretty much anybody in between. Some people feel like this is a refreshing change. Some people feel like this is a negative change. So I want to hear from you guys. Is this a good safety move? Is it a bad safety move? There's some very passionate people on both sides of the aisle, so just leave a comment down below. I'd like to get a real conversation going on about how we can all work together to make our roads safer. So it doesn't just affect individual drivers. It sends a clear message about quality and safety across the U.S. economy. The first place it hits is the conversation around the driver shortage. We've been hearing the numbers for years, and the industry is short tens of thousands of drivers. Some say up to 80,000, and it's projected to get worse. But the real issue isn't just a shortage of drivers. It's a shortage of qualified and safe drivers. And I feel this rule helps define what qualified truly means. Over the last several years, the U.S. trucking industry has gotten more and more diverse with immigrant drivers. As of a couple of years ago, there were over 700,000 foreign-born truck drivers in the U.S., which makes up about 20% of all drivers. This strict enforcement holds this group of drivers and all drivers to the same high standard. Even if they're experienced, they are now required to meet this professional qualification. Some experts estimate that about 10% of all CDL holders in the U.S. might not have the strong English skills this enforcement requires. Others suggest the rule could sideline somewhere between 40 to 60,000 drivers who do not meet the minimum safety standard. So let's think about that. In an industry desperate for people, we are prioritizing safety and quality over just filling a seat. It's like trying to build a winning team by recruiting the best players, not just anyone who can show up. Trucking companies that prioritize safety understand this will elevate the entire profession. So what does that mean for you? It's not just a trucking problem. It's a national priority. It may mean short-term adjustment as the industry adapts. It may mean delays getting products to stores as companies compete for a pool of more professional drivers. And when shipping costs adjust, you might pay more for food, clothes, and everything else. But that is the price of ensuring our highways are safer for everyone. This isn't really a what-if scenario because it's already happening. And the weeks after the enforcement started, spot rates for loads coming up from Mexico shot up. One report said dry van spot rates jumped by almost $1 per mile. Why? Well, carriers are ensuring their drivers can meet the English requirement before sending them out. The rule meant to solve a safety issue is doing exactly that, and the economy is adjusting. So some people, they kind of think of this as a red herring. So whenever a big sweeping rule like this comes along, it's important to address the criticisms. The whole reason for this is safety. But some ask, is a driver's English level really the biggest threat on our roads? A lot of critics suggest it might be a distraction from other issues. Here's the reality, though. Major safety studies might not always draw a perfect line between limited English and crash statistics, but common sense does. The argument that we should ignore a clear and present danger because it doesn't fit neatly into a statistical model is a weak one. Opponents of this new enforcement point to a lack of specific data and ask why this has suddenly become a priority. The answer is that a risk doesn't need to cause 1,000 accidents before it's taken seriously. They argue that the things that are killing people are driver fatigue, poor training, speeding, and bad maintenance. And to be quite honest, they are right. Those things are very deadly. But safety isn't an either-or proposition. We have to address all of it. By putting so much energy into a driver's communication skills, we are adding another layer of safety, not taking away from it. We should be testing vocabulary and checking brakes and reviewing law books. All of these things together is what makes us safer. On top of that, some are raising concerns about discrimination. But in an industry that has seen a rise in immigrant labor, a single objective standard applied to everyone is the definition of fairness. A driver's accent or origin is irrelevant. Their ability to understand and communicate critical safety information is not. This will not knock skilled, safe drivers out of a job. It will ensure that all skilled and safe drivers also have the necessary communication skills to operate safely in our country. The argument here is that the communication absolutely matters. This new approach is a direct and necessary tool for a serious problem. It holds accountable drivers who may understand road signs but cannot function in an emergency or during a critical inspection. The question isn't whether we are sidelining a veteran driver with a spotless record, but whether that driver meets all the necessary qualifications, including communication. The trucking industry is not a monolith, and its reaction to this rule shows a clear divide between prioritizing safety and prioritizing logistics. Different groups have different missions, and they're all seeing this through their own lens. On one side, you've got a large and vocal part of the industry, including groups like the Owner-Operator Independent Driver Association, who strongly support the stricter rule. But on the other side, you may have many trucking companies and logistics providers looking at this from a purely operational viewpoint. They are concerned about the impact on the labor pool. These are the people dealing with the driver shortage every day. From their perspective, this rule complicates their hiring efforts. They see the pool of available drivers shrinking at a difficult time. Carriers now face new responsibilities. They must ensure their current drivers can pass these checks. They may need to invest in English classes for their team, and they face the operational challenge of having a truck stranded. For some companies, this rule will enforce them to invest more in training and recruitment. One owner-operator on a forum expressed the concern, "We already have a 60,000 driver shortage." It's like they want it to make it worse. But safety advocates would argue it's not about making it worse, it's about making it better and safer. This whole thing has drawn a clear line in the industry between what's easy and what's right. So in a world where we have an app for everything, it seems like, some have asked, can't technology help with this? For years, drivers have used translation apps to communicate. If you can use your phone for a real-time conversation, why can't a driver use it to talk to a DOT inspector? Some people in the industry have pushed for this, arguing that technology could be a middle ground. An approved app could help a driver understand an officer, ensuring information gets across. But the government has correctly shut the door on that idea. The official guidance is crystal clear. No translation apps, no interpreters, nothing. Their reasoning is sound. Essentially, these tools can mask a driver's true inability to communicate. In a real emergency, a driver won't have time to fumble with their phone. What if battery is dead, or they lose it during a wreck, or there's no signal? Officials argue that communication in a crisis has to be instant and direct. A firefighter, for example, at a crash scene, can't wait for a driver to type something into an app. They need to be able to yell instructions and know they are understood immediately. I feel like this leaves us in a clear position. On one hand, tech is useful in daily life. On the other, there's a very real concern about what happens in a life or death moment, where technology can and does fail. For now, tech is not the answer because it's not a reliable solution to a safety-critical task. The focus is 100% on the driver's own ability to speak and understand English, a standard that technology cannot reliably meet for them. Okay, so the rule is here and it's being enforced, right? What can drivers do? What kind of a practical advice can we give? First of all, I think the best approach for drivers is to embrace professionalism. We need to understand why the rule exists, and we need to understand the rule itself. So essentially, when you get pulled in for an inspection, you need to be prepared. Have your papers in order, be polite, and listen carefully. Remember, the assessment of your professionalism starts the second they talk to you. It's essentially about meeting a job requirement that's now being properly enforced. Look for ways to strengthen your conversational English, especially trucking-specific terms. This could be local ESL classes or any of the thousands of online tools and apps. Practice whenever you can. Listen to the radio or podcasts in English. The goal is to become confident enough that communicating with an inspector is a standard part of the job. For carriers and owner-operators, you must lead on safety. Start with your hiring. It's now more important than ever to screen for English skills. Again, this is not about discrimination. It's about ensuring a driver is fully qualified for the job, which protects them and your company, as well as the public. Make sure to invest in your current drivers. This could be as simple as a list of online ESL tools, or even partnering with a company to offer classes. Talk to your drivers about this rule. Make sure they know what's expected and why it's important. A prepared driver is a confident, professional driver, and a professional driver is far less likely to have a problem. Finally, for everyone, stay informed. We need to make sure we are keeping up with the news from the FMCSA and also trade magazines. Share best practices on forums and with other drivers, as this is a moment for the industry to raise its standards. And honestly, that happens through preparation, through education, and also supporting each other. So if you guys found this breakdown helpful, do me a favor and make sure to hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and most importantly, ring that notification bell. So the point of this channel is to cut through the noise and just give you guys straight up information to help you stay out on the road. So I hope you guys join me. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe out there, drivers, and I will see you in the next episode.